Ozempic is all the craze right now. Every single day I get several clients asking me for a prescription of Ozempic, and I know many patients who spend a significant amount of money on Semaglutide, Ozempic or Wegovy. For those who don't know, Ozempic or Semaglutide is a weight loss drug also used for type 2 diabetes. In clinical trials, it has been shown to reduce weight by up to 20%, which is equivalent to bariatric surgery. It belongs to a family of drugs called GLP1 agonists and is delivered as a subcutaneous injection once a week, self-administered. In the United States, Ozempic can cost up to $1,000 per month. Here in Canada, the cost is less. If you have type 2 diabetes, it may be partially covered by your insurance company, and if not, often you'll be paying out of pocket, and the cost can vary from pharmacy to pharmacy. I've seen clients pay around $400 per month. How Ozempic or Semaglutide works is by being an agonist of GLP1 or glucagon-like peptide. Incretins like GLP1 are physiological regulators of appetite and caloric intake. Receptors for these are found in several areas of the brain involved in appetite regulation. Apart from regulating appetite by increasing satiety, reducing hunger, they also increase insulin secretion by pancreatic beta cells, suppress inappropriate rise in glucagon levels, and also slow down gastric emptying, which is the primary cause of side effects that some clients face, particularly nausea and a feeling of fullness or bloatedness. Which is why we taper the dose up slowly, usually starting at 0.25 milligrams subcutaneous once a week, up to 0.5, then 1 milligram, and depending upon indication whether it is diabetes or obesity, the doses can be titrated up further. So at a brain level, GLP-1 causes decreased food intake, it causes decreased fasting insulin at a pancreatic level, increased GLP-1 incretin effect at the bowel level, and reduced liver production of sugar at a liver level. GLP-1 is also considered to be the main driver for weight loss after gastric bypass surgery. Whether it's a vertical sleeve gastrectomy or a Roe and Y gastric bypass, it is noted that GLP levels surge up dramatically after surgery, and it is thought that this is a primary driver of weight loss after bypass surgery. This is a table which shows how these two different gastric operations affect hormones, in particular GLP-1 and another very important gut hormone that we will cover later in the video called PYY. This is a schematic showing the subtle differences between these two procedures and the kind of physiological effects that they have on your body, resulting in weight loss and often a remission in type 2 diabetes. Perhaps you are struggling with your weight and you are considering a prescription of a drug such as Ozempic, Semaglutide, or even considering gastric bypass surgery. What if I told you that there are physiological lifestyle dietary ways in which you can increase your GLP-1 and PYY levels without needing an expensive medication and without having to go through an irreversible surgery? Because effective as they are, one thing you need to bear in mind with semaglutide as well as gastric bypass surgery is that a significant number of clients, over half, would get a return of weight once they stop the medication or a certain period of time passes since the surgery. So while these things may be useful as a kickstart, these are not permanent methods to maintain ideal weight. You would have to make significant lifestyle and dietary changes to be able to maintain that weight loss. And in this video, we'll be talking about how you can do that. My name is Dr. Rawat. I'm a physician, Indian origin, England trained, Canada based, currently studying nutrition and lifestyle at Harvard. And in this video, we'll be talking about how you can use lifestyle and dietary means to to increase your GLP1 and PYY levels, so achieve what you would get from weight loss drugs like Ozempic and weight loss surgery like bariatric surgery. Please remember to share this video with anyone who's trying to lose weight, particularly if you're considering going down the route of starting expensive medication or irreversible surgery. This is a review article about GLP1 from Mount Sinai Hospital, University of Toronto. And in this article, GLP1 is described along with its actions on sugar metabolism as well as other metabolic aspects in other parts of our body. This review article describes clearly how we can increase GLP levels in our body. And this is primarily through modulating our gut microbiome. If we follow a diet and lifestyle which promotes diversity within our gut microbiome, we can then have those gut microbiome produce short-chain fatty acids, which then lead to increased production of GLP1 and PYY, as we can see in this diagram below. These short-chain fatty acids which go into our bloodstream and have an effect on various parts of our body, including acetate, butyrate, and propionate, also have other independent beneficial effects on our metabolism to aid us in losing weight. And ensure you watch this video till the very end, because we will be discussing exactly what kind of diet and lifestyle you need to follow to optimize your gut microbiome to be able to produce more GLP1 and PYY. Some of you may be wondering what the gut microbiome is. The gut microbiome or microbiota are friendly bacteria which live in our gut and have a profound effect on our metabolism. These are bacteria which have evolved with us over millions of years. There are many foods which we cannot digest without the help of these bacteria. They also ferment fibers and produce chemicals like short-chain fatty acids which have a profound effect on our metabolism and also help secrete beneficial hormones like GLP1 and PYY. There are certain types of dietary patterns which can lead to a loss of diversity in the gut microbiome, a thinning of the mucus layer which divides the gut bacteria from your intestinal cells, and a dysbiosis of the gut, often called in layman terms as leaky gut, which can be a source of chronic inflammation, irritable bowel syndrome symptoms, as well as food intolerances and food allergies. Apart from beneficial effects on weight loss and metabolic health, resetting your gut microbiome, as will be described later in this video, can also have a beneficial effect in symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome and food intolerances, as well as chronic systemic inflammation. So as you can see, having a sick gut can be central to your overall health, and fixing it can be that root cause that you fix, which can then lead to that cascading effect of weight loss, improving metabolic health, and general well-being all around. The power of the gut microbiome is not to be underestimated. The number of bacteria inside your gut equals the number of cells in your entire body. In a single sample of stool, the number of DNA in the bacteria in your gut is 38 times more than the entire DNA of your entire body. So the metabolic effects of the friendly bacteria which reside in your gut cannot be overemphasized. Of course, we would like these bacteria to be friendly, but certain types of dietary patterns, particularly what we call a Western industrialized style of dietary pattern, leads to a certain type of pattern within the gut microbiome which is detrimental for health, which causes weight gain, metabolic syndrome, and chronic inflammation. So as described in this review article, your gut microbiome helps regulate your metabolism. Numerous metabolites produced by the gut microbiomes act on specific host receptors. They produce short-chain fatty acids which trigger the secretion of gut peptides like GLP1 and peptide YY. Gut microbes regulate the production of endocannabinoids and neurotransmitters, and bacterial components act as endocrine factors controlling host metabolism. There have been studies trying to delineate whether certain types of microbiome patterns are associated with obesity, while other types of patterns would be associated with not being obese. And studies have certainly shown that there are certain patterns associated with obesity and other patterns associated with better metabolic health. Generally speaking, having more gut diversity of microbiome is considered to be beneficial for health. This study demonstrated that increased number of genes or a more rich, enhanced microbiome was associated with a healthier state, while having a low gene count or a lower number of microbial genes was associated with higher adiposity, insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, and low-grade inflammation. This study also tracked subjects with a lower diversity microbiome and showed that even over time, these subjects tended to gain more weight. The gut microbiome is a very emerging science. A lot of research has been done quite recently in the last few decades in this field. The Genome Project, in which the gut microbiome was characterized, gave huge impetus to this field. I will be highlighting a few studies which show the scientific basis of what we are describing. This study, for example, shows how short-chain fatty acids like propionate are produced by the gut microbiome. Here, microbial pathways are described on how they lead to production of these beneficial short-chain fatty acids. Here, they have been able to characterize what kind of microbes are associated with increases in which particular types of short-chain fatty acids. This pathway describes what kind of substrates in the diet are used by these bacteria to produce these beneficial chemicals. This table describes how certain types of monosaccharides and other types of carbohydrates are converted by certain bacteria into these short-chain fatty acids. This table here describes the formation of butyrate, and this article here describes the beneficial effects that these short-chain fatty acids produced by your healthful gut microbiome have on your body. This diagram describes how the short-chain fatty acids produced by your gut microbiome have far-ranging effects on your liver, pancreas, kidney, muscles, fat tissue, and brain. This mouse study demonstrated how short-chain fatty acids reduce appetite. In mice, it showed how fermentable carbohydrates led to increased fecal short-chain fatty acids and the beneficial effects that had on hormones which mediate hunger. It should be pointed out that improving the diversity of your gut microbiome would not only reduce weight, improve metabolic health, but the subsequent reduction in chronic inflammation would also reduce risk of cancer, particularly GI cancers. So what exactly should you be doing? You might be wondering. I'll first describe this scientifically, and then I'll get into the details of exactly what foods you need to be eating and in what pattern to bolster your gut microbiome to make it beneficial for you. Scientifically, you need to increase prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics would be primarily inulin-like fructans, also called oligofructose or fermentable fiber. These would be the prebiotics which would feed your gut microbiome. This is a study which shows the beneficial effect of inulin-like fructans on GLP1 production. In this study, it was demonstrated that giving inulin-like fructans to rats led to higher portal vein or bloodstream levels of GLP1. This is a study in which there were two cohorts of rats, one given a high-fat diet and the other one given a high-fat diet with oligofructose. It was demonstrated that adding in the oligofructose promoted satiety and weight loss in that second group. As you can see on that bar graph, the group of rats which only had the high-fat diet had more weight gain than those who had a combination of high-fat diet with the oligofructose. This is another article which demonstrated how introduction of oligofructose leads to improvement in glucose metabolism and hepatic or liver insulin sensitivity through the actions of GLP1. This is a rodent study which demonstrated how dietary resistant starches increase GLP1 and PYY levels all day. In this rodent study, normal saline or salt water was compared to short-chain fatty acid propionate, which is produced by our healthy gut microbiome, to check for its effect on GLP1 and peptide YY. As you can see in the table, propionate, which is a short-chain fatty acid, led to a significant increase in GLP1 as well as peptide YY. And as you can see on the graph on the left, this rise in peptide YY and GLP1 was sustained for a period of time after having propionate in comparison to normal saline or salt water. This is one more study which demonstrates how the fermentation of oligofructose or fermentable fibers by the gut microbiome leads to the production of incretins like GLP1, which reduce your appetite. So perhaps you're someone who's been thinking about Ozempic. Depending on where you are, that could cost you anything from about $400 a month to $1,000 a month. Or you may be thinking about a bypass operation, which is a irreversible procedure. The point, however, is that both of these work by increasing GLP1, but this can be done by modulating your own gut microbiome. So let's now talk about the nitty-gritties, the specifics on how you need to modulate your dietary pattern to increase your GLP1. To enhance the diversity of your gut microbiome, you'll need a combination of both prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are what we describe as fermentable starches or fermentable fibers. For this, I will be using this resource from the Harvard website. Beta-glucans are found in oats and barley. They act as a prebiotic and also help normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Guar gum is found in seeds. It has a laxative effect and also helps in normalizing blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Seeds such as pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds are also rich sources of beneficial omega-3 fatty acids, which would further reduce inflammation. A combination of overnight steel-cut oats with a variety of seeds and perhaps some fruit such as blueberry would be an excellent choice as an anti-inflammatory breakfast. In my home, typically I alternate that kind of breakfast with an egg-based breakfast in which we have omega-3 enriched eggs, and even the whole wheat bread that we use is called Country Harvest quinoa and flax, which also contains omega-3. As I discussed in detail in my previous video, omega-3 is extremely important for our health, not just to reduce inflammation and heart disease, but also for brain health and eye health. Inulin and oligofructose are found in onions, chicory root, asparagus, and Jerusalem artichokes. They normalize blood sugar, act as a prebiotic, but can cause bloating in certain clients. Pectins are fermentable fibers found in apples, berries, and other fruits. They also normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Resistant starch is a soluble fermentable fiber which is found in legumes, bananas, as well as certain carbohydrates like pasta or potato, which has been cooked and then cooled. I had discussed resistant starches in a previous video I did on how to reduce sugar spikes and how a strategy of increasing resistant starch would tie in very well with the strategy of early time restricted feeding. The primary message here is that if you boil some potatoes or make some pasta, and if you leave it in the fridge overnight, up to 50% of that carbohydrate would turn into resistant starch. And this would then become a fiber which cannot be absorbed into your bloodstream, so it would not give you a sugar spike. On the contrary, this resistant starch would then feed your gut microbiome and give us all the beneficial effects that we've been talking about. It just so happens that another approach and strategy that I highly recommend is called early time restricted feeding, or a Jainism style intermittent fasting program. Essentially, avoiding eating late, not eating after 5 p.m. 5 days a week. That is what I practice myself. So particularly in the case of cooking carbohydrates like rice, potatoes, pasta, if you're cooking it at night, it makes a lot of sense to not eat it on the day you cook it. Put those starches in the fridge, eat it the next day, and not only will you get less of a sugar spike by eating those, they will also be turned into resistant starch, which will then help your gut microbiome and give you all the beneficial effects we've been talking about. And on the topic of intermittent fasting, guess what else intermittent fasting does? Yes, fasting also increases GLP1 levels. So all of this would work out really well together. I would like to note, however, that longer forms of fasting, more than 1 day, can have a detrimental effect on the gut microbiome and also can reduce GLP1 levels. So I do not recommend long fasts. I recommend a mild time restricted feeding, Jainism style, mild fasting approach, essentially circadian fasting, avoiding eating late. It's actually really simple. If you eat early, after that meal, you will be active, you will be doing exercise, and you will utilize those calories for production of muscle, for use as fuel. While if you eat late, put your feet up and watch television, those same calories get utilized as storage, and it is that excessive storage of energy which is the primary driver of metabolic syndrome. So along with healthy nutrition, exercise, sleeping well, reducing stress, having positive social connections, and avoiding addictive substances and habits, a mild, early time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting plan, or a Jainism style fasting is really beneficial, not just for weight loss, but as we can see here, even to increase your GLP1 levels, which is exactly how Ozempic, Wegovy, Semaglutide works, and also how gastric bypass surgery works. The other food you need to add to your diet is probiotics. Natural probiotics found in food. For this, I will be referring to this article published at Harvard. The best sources of natural probiotic are yogurts, kefir, fermented foods like sauerkraut, pickles, miso, kombucha, and certain more mature cheeses like cheddar cheese and soft cheeses like cottage cheese. Note that in most cases, foods which have active live bacteria will be kept in the refrigerated section of the supermarket. The kinds of fermented foods which are kept in cans or are bottled generally would not contain live active bacteria. Those would have been sterilized before canning or bottling. In a study done at Stanford by Drs. Sonnenberg and Christopher Gardner, the participants had to consume up to 6 servings of fermented foods, and this showed a beneficial effect on their gut microbiome diversity. To summarize, if you want to naturally increase your GLP1 levels, you would need to increase the amount of fermentable starch in your diet, which would be your prebiotic, increase the amount of natural probiotic in your diet, and also some degree of mild ETRF or early time restricted feeding intermittent fasting. A combination of those 3 things would increase your GLP1 levels like what you would expect with medication like Ozempic, Wegovy, or a gastric bypass surgery. Doing all of these things, particularly if you're starting from a baseline of an unhealthy microbiome, would cause some side effects initially, particularly bloating and passing of gas. However, this is something which generally settles over time. And remember, any path to better metabolic health is not easy. Even medications such as Ozempic and certainly surgical procedures like gastric bypass surgery have their own list of side effects and risks. Most patients who are advised to embark upon a journey of resetting their gut microbiome, such as the patients in the study by Dr. Sonnenberg and Christopher Gardner, were told to increase their fiber intake and probiotic intake slowly in weekly steps and stay at that level if they were getting significant bloating or gas, and increase gradually in steps. Eventually, the new microbiome establishes itself and those symptoms go down. These are Dr. Sonnenberg, who have been trailblazing scientists in the field of microbiome research. Resetting your gut microbiome or establishing a new microbiome community is like planting new plants in your vegetable patch. If that is already densely populated with other vegetables, perhaps weeds, as you could describe, unhealthy microbes, which are generally caused by excessive intake of ultra-processed refined sugars. If you have in the past been eating excessive factory-made refined ultra-processed sugars, and in my book that includes even white rice and white bread, then you would have a community of microbes which are not beneficial for you. These would be inhabiting more the small intestine than the larger intestine, because absorption of more refined sugars happens earlier and higher up in your gut, and this can also lead to something called small intestine bacterial overgrowth syndrome, essentially a bacterial dysbiosis, also described as leaky gut, which can cause metabolic syndrome and chronic inflammation. So how do you instill healthy bacteria in a gut which is already overpopulated by unhealthy bacteria, which have been feeding on not just those refined sugars, but in many cases even on your own mucous gut lining, causing chronic inflammation and leaky gut? I have seen Dr. Sonnenberg put that question on various podcasts, including this one at The Proof, and also by Dr. Andrew Huberman on his Huberman Lab podcast. And there has been a question about whether colonic irrigation or colon enema may have a role in speeding up the reset of your gut. Interestingly, I often recommend to my clients the Sattvic Movement website, which along with a whole food plant predominant diet and intermittent fasting also recommend an enema for gut health. Scientifically, there is no data to show that an enema would help improve anyone's gut health. However, I have heard Dr. Sonnenberg state on a few podcasts that if a particular client has a particular difficulty establishing a new gut microbiome because they have well-established weeds in their garden or unhealthy bacteria which have taken root, then a few enemas followed by a very well-planned prebiotic and probiotic diet afterwards may help in establishing those new gut microbiomes into your gut. While there is no scientific data to back this up, it can be imagined how this would be akin to weeding your garden before planting new plants. I hope you found this video useful. Please do share this video with anyone who is struggling to lose weight or is trying to achieve better metabolic health. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Once I complete my nutrition studies at Harvard, I plan to write a book and establish a weight loss and metabolic health program. Until then, I will see you at the next video.